Have you ever been broken? Do you ever feel like you're broken or damaged or wounded? And here are some things that I have learned and noticed along the way. And the first one is this, and it's really important. Everyone's broken. Everyone's broken in one way or another. We're all broken by sin because all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. There's no one righteous, no, not one. The Scripture tells us that. We know that. But if not us directly in terms of dealing with a health issue or something else, then it's someone who's close to us, a family member or a friend or a job. It may not be physical health, but it could be emotional, that someone is broken emotionally. Someone might be broken mentally. Or spiritually, they might be hurt or wounded or damaged. And there's a lot of people that have been damaged or hurt because of a church experience, or someone did this or someone didn't do this, or something happened when I was younger or older, or when I went through a part of my life and people weren't there to help me. Sometimes people are broken relationally. Sometimes people are broken because of some sexual abuse or something that happened in that realm and that world, that part of their life. Some people are broken financially. They've been damaged and they haven't been able to recover from where they were to where they want to be. And it may be some other area of life. And so as we're talking about brokenness and being damaged and being wounded, here's a couple of things that I think it's important for us to keep in mind when we're dealing with each other. Okay? Number one is this, is that we tend to hide the pain that we're in. How you doing? I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. You know, because we've all experienced the fact when someone asks you that question and you go into a little bit more of an answer, they begin to look for help, help, help. Somebody get me out of this conversation. I don't want to be here. Right? We know that. So we tend to hide the pain that we're in. And sometimes we hide it because of our embarrassment or our shame. And sometimes we hide the pain that we're in because of pride or ego. You know, we're ashamed about what might happen. Sometimes we don't want to burden people or someone else with our issues, or to be broken further by someone's indifference. Sometimes when we've opened up to people, they act like it's no big deal. And we get broken even more because I trusted you to take this woundedness that I have, and you have treated it like it's nothing. And so we need to be careful about that. Sometimes we don't share our brokenness or our damagedness or our woundedness because we don't want to be labeled that way. Oh, there's so-and-so. They used to be okay, but they're broken now. Almost as if we might be a broken toy or someone that doesn't have worth anymore because we've got mileage on us. Sometimes we don't talk about our brokenness because we're afraid of what might happen. Will I get transitioned out? You know, when I've been open to our leadership team, that's been a legitimate fear, is that maybe you'll go find someone who's a little bit healthier, someone who doesn't have this issue, someone who doesn't have this problem. And of course, we all can ask the question, has God abandoned me? Yeah. Where's God? God, why didn't you do it the way I would like you to? Or at least close to the way I would like you to. So in the midst of all this, as I was looking in Scripture, in Mark chapter 5, there's a story about a woman that's dealing with an issue where she's bleeding all the time. She's bleeding all the time. And this story is kind of unique because it's a story within a story. Because it's the story of the meta story is a story of how that Jairus comes to Jesus. His daughter is dying, major issue. He comes to Jesus, says, will you come and heal my daughter? Will you help us? And so Jesus goes. But in the midst of his going, another woman who has this issue says, if I could just get close to Jesus, if I could just touch him, maybe there would be a healing that comes to me. And so keep that context in mind. And it's put together on purpose by Mark, because those themes of healing, they're different kinds, they're different times, they're different styles, but they have impact and influence for us. And so Mark chapter 24, it begins by saying that Mark chapter 5, verse 24. So Jesus went with Jairus, and a large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she got worse. So keep in mind, so here's a woman who had something. She lost it all because she spent it all on trying to get well. So she was now impoverished. She was still sick. She was losing hope. Nothing was working. She was the ultimate broken person. Not to mention, not to forget the fact that because of the bleeding, she became unclean and ceremonially unclean, and that therefore every time she jostled somebody in the crowd, she made them unclean as well. And so she was pretty much a pariah to the people around her because she was unclean. And think about the way that we deal with people who are broken and unclean and wounded and damaged. And I can be just as guilty as anybody else in that regard. And here she is. She just kept getting worse. And when she heard about Jesus, verse 27, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I could just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. So something immediately happened for her that she recognized that something had taken place. It wasn't like, well, I hope maybe I'll check it out later on and see. She knew that something had happened. At once, Jesus realized the power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and he asked, "Who touched my clothes?" Now, I think the Bible is filled with a lot of humor. And so sometimes it's kind of subtle, but here's one of those moments. And that, just imagine this. Jesus is going down this path or this road or wherever he was at, and he's trying to get to Jairus' house, and it says that the crowd was around him, and they're bumping into him and touching him and all these things that happens. If you ever went to a Seahawk game or a Mariners game and you know the bustle of the crowd and you're bumping into people and excuse me and I'm sorry, it's even more so. That's probably taking place. And so people are touching him all the time, but he recognized that someone touched him differently. And his disciples are going, "Wait, are you crazy? Everyone's touching you. Of course they're touching you. What do you mean by this?" And Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. And then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet. And trembling with fear, she told him the truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering."